Hello everyone. So today, welcome to the NEET PG recall questions. So speaking about the NEET PG paper concerned with pathology, it was really a standard paper, not very tough, not very easy. There were both the type of questions, one-liners, fact-based questions, and we also had case scenarios. Okay, so I'm pretty sure most of you all have done well because the topics were a very familiar kind of topics which we expect. Okay. And so let us begin with the session. The first question is, Pap smear showed hyperchromatic pleomorphic nuclei. Okay, hyperchromatic pleomorphic nuclei with low maturation index. Okay, with full thickness involvement. So this point we have to observe full thickness involvement, hyperchromatic pleomorphic nuclei and low maturation index. Okay, so ideally the question should have been cervical biopsy or something, but it was recalled as pap smear. So what is it called? Dysplasia, metaplasia, carcinoma, hyperplasia. See, they have given it is full thickness involvement. Whenever we tell full thickness, whenever the whole thickness of the epithelium is involved, okay, and it involves pleomorphic cells, okay, when there are pleomorphic cells and no evidence of invasion is given, okay, the right option should be dysplasia. Okay, so what is metaplasia? Metaplasia is nothing but, see, dysplasia is also reversible, metaplasia is also reversible, but dysplasia is reversible only in the early cases. That is one MCQ which we can expect for the future. Second one is, what is metaplasia? Metaplasia is a reversible change, okay, where one type of epithelium, okay, one mature type of epithelium is replaced by another type of epithelium. Okay, one mature is replaced by another type of epithelium. To tell it as carcinoma, okay, we have to see invasion. It has to invade through the basement membrane. Okay, so it is not a carcinoma. Here they have not given anything like that. So it's not a carcinoma. Hyperplasia, there will not be any pleomorphism. There will just be increase in the number of cells. So the answer is dysplasia. And this is the first topic which we always deal with. Okay. So adaptations in the cell chapter, adaptations under that subheading, always we deal with this. Okay. So see, this is a cervical biopsy. That is why I told you ideally they should have given cervical biopsy. See, this is the normal thing. So whatever cells are here are basal cells. Okay. Just above them are parabasal cells. Okay. And then as we go up, we have mature cells. So if we see more of parabasal cells and basal cells, that means the maturation index is low. Okay, that is the maturation index is low. Maturation index is nothing but ratio of parabasal cells to intermediate cells, that is in between the parabasal and the mature squamous cells, to squamous cells. So the maturation index will be low. See here, this is the normal cervical biopsy. Okay, then this one, it is carcinoma in situ 1, 2 and 3, isn't it? So 3 is actually full thickness dysplasia. So see here, so this is what they have asked you here. So this is CIN3, fine. Next, patient with mediastinal mass diagnosed with red cell aplasia, an important clue, not responding to blood transfusion. Okay, what is the probable cause? Fine. So we have a clue, it is a mediastinal mass. So when looking into the options, seeing these two clue points, mediastinal mass and red cell aplasia, we already know that concept, red cell aplasia is one of the important paraneoplastic manifestation of thymic neoplasm, thymoma. So when it comes to red cell neoplasia, just for the concept, I want to tell you, when it comes to pure red cell aplasia, we can have, according to Hofbrand, we can have acute or transient. Okay, acute or transient. Okay, when we have acute or transient, we have to think of two things: parvovirus, parvovirus infection, and drugs like azathioprine and cotrimoxazole. Okay, and drugs like azathioprine and cotrimoxazole. Next we have chronic pure red cell aplasia. In this chronic, again, we have congenital and acquired. Okay, so when it comes to congenital, we have to think of Diamond-Blackfan anemia. Okay, DBA. We have to think of DBA. When it comes to acquired causes, first thing itself is thymoma. Okay, first thing is thymoma. Then we have SLE. Okay, rheumatoid arthritis. We have SLE and rheumatoid arthritis. So first thing which comes is thymoma. So in the option there is thymoma. So I think we have to go with thymoma. Then the next question was patient with generalized weakness and fatigue. Preliminary clinical examination was normal. Okay, so he is just having generalized weakness and fatigue. The patient is having a normal total leukocyte count and differential count. Okay, so the counts are normal. No immature cell. So once the counts are normal and no immature cell, leukemia is ruled out. Okay, then superficial lymph nodes are enlarged and discrete. Okay, leukemia is ruled out. Superficial lymph nodes are enlarged and discrete. So something to do with the lymph nodes. The patient is having generalized weakness. So we can come down to lymphoma. Okay, then lymph node biopsy shows effaced architecture. So now it's a confirmation that it's some kind of lymphoma. Effaced architecture means the normal architecture, the follicles, that normal lymphoid architecture is lost. Okay, so effaced architecture means there is some lymphoma. The cells had an indented nucleus. Okay, a prominent nucleoli. And the characteristic feature is BCL2 positive and CD10 positive. Always I have taught you in hematology classes. So Burkitt's is ruled out, mycosis fungoides, that is nothing but cutaneous T-cell lymphoma, NHL. The answer is specifically follicular lymphoma. So these are the slides which I usually show, and it is from the WHO. So the typical architecture, this is the low power view, is effaced. Okay, and see these cells, they have a small indented nuclei, isn't it? They have indented nuclei. And when coming to the other points, what we have to remember in follicular lymphoma, it's a B-cell lymphoma. Okay, the patient will usually have generalized lymphadenopathy, but discrete. You have to remember generalized lymphadenopathy, discrete. When we take a lymph node biopsy, we will see centrocytes which have a cleaved nuclear contour. Okay, they are otherwise called buttock cells. And there are also centroblasts with prominent nuclei which are little more larger. If it is involving, in this case, whatever they have given, it is not involving the bone marrow. If it involves the bone marrow, we will see paratrabecular lymphoid aggregates. Very important point we have to look at here is immunophenotyping, because most of the questions they definitely focus on immunophenotyping. So CD10 positive, all B cell markers, CD19 positive, CD20 and BCL6 and surface immunoglobulin positive. But what is specific is BCL2 is positive. Normal follicular center cells which are their normal lymph node usually will be BCL2 negative. So BCL2 positive with these CD markers, it is definitely follicular lymphoma. One more clue they have given is cleaved nuclei. Cytogenetics, in case they ask, it should be translocation 14-18. I'm sure you all know. And 30 to 50% of cases transform to diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. Next question. History of fatigue was given. Okay. Weight loss. So something with fatigue and weight loss, you have to think of a neoplasm. Okay. Then why weight loss? Because of cachectin, that you all know. So multiple infection. The patient had multiple infection with 20 years of benzene exposure. 20 years of benzene exposure. So this question, the exact options I not got. Okay. So the question is 20 years of benzene exposure, systemic examination was normal. Okay. Most likely to have which of the following carcinoma? If your options were bladder, lung, skin, bowel, probably this should be benzidine. Okay. And then you can mark it as bladder. If it is benzene, one of the options should have been blood, because benzene will lead to AML. Benzene is a carcinogen which will lead to AML, which will predispose to AML. Benzidine will predispose to bladder carcinoma. Fine. Similarly, arsenic we have to know. It will predispose to carcinoma of lung and skin. Okay, arsenic is carcinoma of lung and skin. Asbestos we have to know. Asbestos is again lung, pleura and peritoneum. Benzene, this list is always given in the classes, okay. Benzene is AML. Fine. Vinyl chloride is liver. Nickel dust is again lung. Okay, nickel dust is again lung. The molecule was benzene, which was given. One of the options should have been blood, and it is AML. If it is benzidine, then you have to go with bladder carcinoma. And another question students told was an image with bladder papillary growth was given. Okay, and the question was something to do with cystoprostatectomy was done. Cystoprostatectomy was done. So when cystoprostatectomy is done, that is that when that procedure is done, obviously it should be some neoplasm. Okay, see, two images we always show. Okay, one is this one and the other one is malakoplakia, isn't it? This is bladder carcinoma. This is bladder carcinoma because they have given, if they had given cystoprostatectomy and with this image, it should be bladder carcinoma. It is usually TCC. With this, another high yield point I want you to remember for your next exam is, okay, if it is concerned with the genetics, okay, 9p gene deletion, when there is 9p gene deletion, it is a papillary tumor. When it is 17p gene deletion, it is invasive urothelial carcinoma. Okay, so similarly, a similar bladder with yellowish streaks in the Robbins is given. Okay, yellowish plaques are there in the bladder. That is an image of malakoplakia and it is due to chronic bacterial cystitis. Okay, so but here if they had given cystoprostatectomy with the image, you should go with bladder cancer. A 34-year-old female presented with fever, migratory arthritis of lower limb joints. Okay, cardiovascular examination showed tachycardia, pansystolic murmur and echo showed MR. Okay, the biopsy findings are shown below. See, by this history itself, you can come to a conclusion that it is rheumatic fever, isn't it? So, see, this is taken exactly from Robbins. This I use in my classes also to teach you. See, migratory polyarthritis, subcutaneous nodules, sydenham scoria, okay, pancarditis, fine. All these, I'm sure you all know about the Jones criteria. So, with all this knowledge, we can conclude that it is rheumatic fever. The case is rheumatic fever, okay, and the image, which looks like a granuloma, the image what they have given is Ashkoff bodies. Okay, Ashkoff bodies. They contain macrophages, okay, with lymphocytes and see, these are all modified macrophages. They are nothing but they are called Antischkoff cells. Okay, Antischkoff cells. Okay, these are pathognomic of rheumatic fever, Ashkoff bodies. And these macrophages have abundant cytoplasm and the nuclei is hyperchromatic and caterpillar-like world. Okay, so that is why it is called caterpillar cells also. So this image was given. Fine. So the answer is Ashkoff body. The answer is Ashkoff body. So these were all easy questions. So software engineer complains of easy fatigability. Okay, he spent 12 to 14 hours per day in front of his computer. Okay, that's nothing much important. More junk food and less fruits and vegetables. CBC findings are HB is 9, MCV is 120. What is the most likely cause of anemia? See, HB is 9, MCV is 120. Now you know that it is a macrocytic anemia, isn't it? Because of MCV. You know that it is a macrocytic anemia. Fine. That is okay. But see, it can be caused by both white, see, sideroblastic, I know, I'm sure you all will rule out, and acute blood loss anemia, nothing leading in the history, so it will be ruled out. The only doubt is in between cyanocobalamin and folic acid. Basically, this vitamin B12, okay, vitamin B12 deficiency and folic acid deficiency will lead to megaloblastic anemia or macrocytic anemia. Okay, but what is the thing is vitamin B12 is more common. One point we have to keep in mind. Second point is vitamin B12 deficiency will occur in vegans, okay, who is only on vegetarian diet. That we have to keep. And folic acid deficiency is quite rare when compared to vitamin B12 deficiency. Folic acid deficiency occurs in people who take in less amount of fruits and vegetables. Fine. That also we have to keep in mind. Now, how to conclude if it is vitamin B12 or folic acid? I think we have to go with the option of vitamin B12 because it is one thing is more common. Next, in case we have a deficiency of vitamin B12 and folic acid deficiency is very rare because of, due to nutritional cause. Whenever we add them on anti-cancer drugs, that time it is common, but otherwise drug-induced it is common, nutritional it is never common. So we should go with vitamin B12. Second thing is, in case both the deficiencies are coexisting also, we have to first treat them with vitamin B12. Okay, otherwise the neuronal complications will occur. So it is better to go with vitamin B12. A patient with cirrhosis on liver biopsy showed eosinophilic material with cytokeratin positive. This is composed of, this is an old question, okay, microtubule, intermediate filament, fibronectin, actin. Intermediate filament, I'm sure all of our students would have written because I have been teaching this from a long time, okay. So Mallory-Denk bodies, they are called Mallory-Denk bodies. What are they made up of? Intermediate filaments, cytokeratin 8 and 18. 8 and 18. Fine. These are the Mallory-Denk bodies. I'm sure you would have seen this image in my class also. And one more thing is, see, is this Mallory-Denk bodies very specific to alcoholic liver disease? Do you all think it is very specific to alcoholic liver disease? No, it is not specific to alcoholic liver disease. It can also be seen in non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, okay, Indian childhood cirrhosis, okay, Wilson's disease, alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, and alcoholic liver disease. This was an easy question. So you will mark it as it's an intermediate filament. They're intermediate filaments. Fine. 10-year-old male child with generalized edema. Cholesterol is high. The child edema, cholesterol is high. Urine protein is 3+. Urine microscopy shows oval fat globules. The diagnosis is, definitely you would have made, nephrotic syndrome. Why it is not nephritic syndrome? Because there is no microscopic hematuria or RBC cast, no such history is given, or hypertension is not given, so nephritic is ruled out. Okay, good pastures, no symptoms involving the lung is given, so it is ruled out. Urine infection, see, the urine protein will not be this high, and cholesterol has nothing to do with urine infection. Fine. So nephrotic syndrome, what you have to remember is the clinical scenario. Edema pronounced, especially in case of children. Okay. Then the patient will have proteinuria. How much proteinuria? Usually more than 3.5 gram for 24 hours or 2.2 gram albumin a day. Okay, 24 hours. Then next the patient will have hypoalbuminemia. Okay, the patient will have hypoalbuminemia. As it is said in this history, the patient will have edema, more pronounced in case of children. Okay, and the patient will have hypercholesterolemia. Okay, the patient will have hypercholesterolemia. Okay, and one more point is lipiduria. That is what is seen here, oval fat globule. So this was also an easy question. Tocilizumab, definitely would have marked. COVID duties, definitely would have marked. Okay, it is used in rheumatoid arthritis. Yes, it is a biological disease modifying agents, okay, of against rheumatoid arthritis. rheumatoid. Okay, so what is it acting against? Interleukin 6. Okay, another drug which is acting against interleukin 6 is sarilumab. Sarilumab. Okay, fine. Next, male child eye examination shows a white reflex. Biopsy shows Flexner intestinal rosettes. Okay, most probable diagnosis, I'm very, very, very sure you all have marked it right. It is retinoblastoma. Okay, retinoblastoma, two-hit hypothesis, the gene, everything is a must. Okay, Flexner intestinal rosettes. Okay, fine. It's in retinoblastoma. So one more thing here is, when coming to rosettes, this is always taught in your class, but just to recall, when coming to rosettes, there are true rosettes and there are pseudo rosettes. Okay, when coming to true rosettes, that means the cells are arranged in the form of a circle. Okay, and the lumen should be empty. Then it is called a true rosette. So lumen empty. If it is a pseudo rosette, there'll be either a vessel, okay, or a neuropil material. Okay, so classic example for true rosette is Flexner intestinal rosette. It is seen where? In retinoblastoma, okay, primary neuroectodermal tumor, okay, pineoblastoma. When coming to pseudo-rosettes, we have Homer-Wright pseudo-rosette, okay, where there is central neuropil material. The cells are here and there is a central neuropil material, okay, seen in neuroblastoma and medulloblastoma. Fine. And perivascular rosette in case of ependymoma. Perivascular rosette in case of ependymoma. Fine. So these are about rosettes. Next, a 20-year-old boy with gum bleeding, easy bruisability, gum bleeding, you have to expect platelet counts are low. Okay, and fever for 1 month. On examination, the patient has pallor, petechial rashes all over the body, HB is 3 gram percentage, leukocyte count is 1500, that is why the patient has fever. Okay, that is why the patient has fever, and platelet count is 15,000, and that is why easy bruisability and petechial rashes. Peripheral smear showed macrocytes with corrected retic count of 0.5. See, they're just telling you macrocytes, they've not told you the MCV. Okay, fine. Then bone marrow shows fatty streak. That means what they're trying to tell you is the bone marrow is replaced by fat. Okay, so hematopoietic cells are less. That is what they are trying to tell. And absent megakaryocytes definitely is a leading point. That is the first cell to be knocked out in whenever there is suppression of hematopoiesis. So this point is telling you that there is reduced hematopoiesis. It is supported by HB of 3, total leukocyte 1500, platelet count 15,000, and a definitive evidence is fatty streak on bone marrow biopsy. Okay, so there are no immature cells. That means hematopoiesis is reduced. Fine. So the options, what is the diagnosis? The options are disseminated TB can be ruled out at the first point itself because their lymphocytosis should be there and there should be granuloma. So that is out of the thing. Okay. Myelodysplastic syndrome, there is no, it is not here. What the history is telling you is there is a hypocellular marrow, isn't it? In myelodysplastic, it is hypercellular marrow. Okay, it is hypercellular marrow along with dysplastic features in the lineages. Okay, be it erythrocyte or myeloid lineage or the megakaryocyte lineage. So that is not there. So MDS is ruled out. In PNH and aplastic anemia, these both you might get confused. But one thing you have to remember, one point they have given, retic count is 0.5. That means it is reduced, isn't it? So in case of PNH, actually there is hemolysis, so the retic count will be increased. Yes, PNH can go into aplastic anemia. Okay, one of the consequence of PNH is aplastic anemia. Okay, along with the other one being AML. But when it is in the stage of PNH only, there will be reticulocytosis. So here, reduced retic count and hypocellular marrow. Okay, the answer will be idiopathic acquired aplastic anemia. The next question is 50-year-old male with fatigability presented for 1 year, mild anemia, HB10. Okay, and then the patient had splenomegaly. Total leukocyte count was 1,20,000. Platelet count was 5 lakh with neutrophils 60, eosinophils, and see, my ME ratio is 18:1. So there is a myeloid bulge, splenomegaly, myeloid bulge, increased total leukocyte count. So you have made the diagnosis. It should be CML. What is CML? It is a myeloproliferative disorder, isn't it? So which investigation will give you a significant idea, or which is the next investigation, are the two possible questions they have asked. Whatever the question be, significant idea or next investigation, we have to go with FISH and PCR. I'll tell you why. Lab is outdated. No more we are doing that. Okay, so lab score is reduced. All that idea is gone. We are not doing it anymore. Fine. Next thing is whole body PET CT is not the next investigation. Of course, immunophenotyping usually is done for leukemias and lymphomas. Fine. FISH and PCR is preferred for all the myeloproliferative neoplasms. Okay, we never do immunophenotyping for CML. Okay, any myeloproliferative neoplasms. The preferred investigation is FISH and PCR. Just remember it all over that for all the 4 important myeloproliferative neoplasms, FISH with PCR is the investigation of choice. Okay, fine. Next, a 25-year-old female, fine, presented with decreased vision, weak pulse in the upper limb, okay, and retinal hemorrhage. So it is something to do with vasculitis. You all know vasculitis is my favorite topic, and every time I put the classical image of those blood vessels, the larger, medium, and the small blood vessels getting involved from the Robbins, and I have always explained to you. Fine, I am very sure you all know it. And for the juniors, yes, in the next classes we can go through it. So what is the thing? See if the age group is less than 25. Okay, and decreased vision is given and weak pulse is given. Okay, the right answer will be Takayasu. Okay, blindly you can mark it as Takayasu. Fine. In case the age was above 25 years and this weak pulse was not given, okay, just decreased headache, decreased vision and headache was given, that also few people told. So if those were the things which were given, then we have to go with giant cell arteritis. Okay, then we have to go with giant cell arteritis. Okay, so just a few words regarding these thing. Okay, just a few words. Before that, we'll just see. See, these are the images from Robbins regarding Takayasu's arteritis. See, there is narrowing of the okay, before that, I'll just tell you the concept behind that Takayasu arteritis. It is a large vessel arteritis. Okay, Takayasu's is a large vessel arteritis. Fine. The other names are aorto arteritis. Fine. These are potential questions for next exam. That is why I'm going little in detail. Then the other name is aortic arch syndrome. And pulseless disease. Pulseless disease. Fine. It is affecting the large vessel, large to medium sized. Okay, large to medium sized vessel. Okay, branches of aorta. Branches of aorta. Next thing is granulomatous vasculitis. It is granulomatous vasculitis. And characteristically, the patient, see, subclavian artery. Subclavian artery is the most common involved, that we have to know. And characteristically, the patient will have weak pulse in the upper limb, and then difference in the blood pressure between the two limbs. So difference in blood pressure and ocular disturbances. The patient can present with hypertension. Okay, the patient can present with hypertension, but the characteristic are these three. And very, very important is age is less than 50 years. Okay, age is less than 50 years. Same thing when it comes to, see here in Takayasu, see granulomas are there. Okay, granulomas are there. Okay, and these are multinucleated giant cells. Fine, and see the lumen is reduced. The lumen is reduced. The lumen of the vessels. Okay, there is thickening of the vessel. Okay, see here, there is constriction. Fine. Takayasu's is granulomatous vasculitis. This is a picture capture from Robbins itself. So it is called pulseless disease. There is marked weakening of the pulse in the upper extremities. Fine. And there is transmural fibrosis thickening as a consequence of granulomatous inflammation, particularly the aortic arch and the great vessels. The most common is subclavian. Fine, and it is based, indeed the distinction between Takayasu's and giant cell arteritis is based on the age. In patients older than 50, the diagnosis is giant cell aortitis, while those in younger, that is less than 50, it is Takayasu's. So with this, we'll just see a little about temporal arteritis, because a few students told that there were questions on temporal arteritis. I didn't get the exact recall, but anyways. So when it comes to temporal arteritis, already we saw that the age should be more than 50 years. This is also a granulomatous vasculitis. This also affects the large and the medium-sized vessels. Okay. The typical characteristic examination finding is palpable temporal artery. Here they will have visual disturbances and headache. Okay. And one more thing is the investigation of choice for this temporal arteritis, because it is subclavian, isn't it? I mean, temporal. So we can take a biopsy, okay? And because of the skip lesions in this disorder, we should consider a longer biopsy. Fine. We should consider a longer biopsy. Okay, here also we'll see granulomatous inflammation along with multinucleated giant cells. Fine. Treatment, of course, for both are steroids. For both steroids. Another call was, there was a question on Henoch-Schönlein purpura. I didn't get the exact question, but anyways, it said that the patient, a child, okay, had abdominal pain, arthralgia, and palpable purpura. Palpable purpura, abdominal pain, arthralgia, and hematuria, okay. So this classical clinical picture is of Henoch-Schönlein purpura. Okay, the other name for it is anaphylactoid purpura. It is the most common vasculitis in children. It is IgA mediated. It is IgA mediated. One more potential question in this topic is platelets and complements are normal. Platelets and complements are normal. Palpable purpura, it is palpable purpura. Platelets and complements are normal. Fine. So the next question. Familial HNPCC has a defect in base pair excision, point mutation, nucleotide excision, and mismatch repair gene. Definitely you would have marked, because many times I make you people memorize in the class itself. So it is mismatch repair gene. How I ask you to memorize, putting this on the screen itself. So familial adenomatous polyposis, it is the APC gene. HNPCC, it is the DNA mismatch repair, MSH2 and MLH1. Okay, both are autosomal dominant. Poor prognostic marker for multiple myeloma. Okay, I think all of you would have got this right, because this is an easy question. Fine. Poor prognostic marker for multiple myeloma, serum creatinine, beta-2 microglobulin, it's not macroglobulin, it's beta-2 microglobulin. Okay, and then calcium protein. So your Option will be beta-2 microglobulin. See, prognostic markers when it comes in case of multiple myeloma, beta-2 microglobulin is one very, very important. Albumin and LDH. Amongst these, International Staging System myeloma uses only beta-2 microglobulin and albumin for scoring. Okay, so beta-2 microglobulin is very, very, very important. All are increased in case of iron deficiency anemia except. So all are increased. So which is decreased, we have to tell. Total iron binding capacity increased. Very good. So soluble transferrin receptor. Okay, let this be here. Soluble transferrin receptor. Before that, we'll just come into this. Iron protoporphyrin. That will also be increased. Okay. Transferrin saturation, what will happen? Of course, it will be reduced. Soluble transferrin receptor, that is free receptors, increased. Okay. So the answer is C. The answer is C. Okay. For this, few things you have to know. See, MCV, MCH in case of any iron deficiency is reduced. Serum iron is reduced. Total iron binding capacity is increased. Okay. Serum ferritin should be reduced ideally. Okay. Bone marrow iron stores is absent. Okay. And this is the gold standard for diagnosis. And then percentage saturation. Is reduced. Very, very important. Percentage saturation is reduced. Erythrocyte protoporphyrin is increased. This test, erythrocyte protoporphyrin levels, this is very sensitive but less specific. Okay, it is used for screening basically in a large population. It is used for screening. And one potential point we have to know for thing is, see, there's something called soluble transferrin receptor index, which is nothing but soluble transferrin receptor log of ferritin. Okay, so this is especially useful. This index is useful to identify iron deficiency anemia in a setting of chronic inflammation. Okay, see, anemia due to chronic disease also will have a similar picture, isn't it? So to identify iron deficiency anemia in a setting of chronic anemia of chronic disease or chronic inflammation, chronic disorders. So what is this serum transferrin receptor index is? Nothing but serum transferrin receptors to the log of ferritin. Okay, so if the value is more than 0.8 in case of a person with inflammation, then the person is having iron deficiency anemia. But if the person is not having any inflammation, this value should be taken more than 1.5 to tag as iron deficiency anemia. So because why this was formulated is because ferritin is increased, isn't it, in inflammation also. So identifying iron deficiency anemia in chronic inflammatory conditions was quite difficult. So this helps. Fine. There were two questions from Turner's. So I don't know what the exact questions were, but there were two questions. So one thing is probably they have given a case scenario like web neck, okay, and edema, all those things. So they've asked you to mark the diagnosis, that is Turner's. One more thing is USG finding they had asked, I think. So it is streak ovary. Okay, it is streak ovaries. So just a little about Turner's because usually they keep asking Turner's. See, it is the most common sex chromosomal abnormality. Okay, it is the most common sex chromosomal abnormality in females. Okay, it is the most important cause of primary amenorrhea. So when it comes to clinical features, we'll just keep it simple because they have focused this year on clinical features. I'm just concentrating on the clinical features. If it is in infancy, what clinical features will have? If the patient is of adolescence age, what features the patient will have? In case of infancy, you have to look for edema of the dorsum of hand and foot and neck webbing, and then edema of nape of the neck, cystic hygroma. Fine. And then you have to look for congenital heart disease, which is the most common thing. It is preductal coarctation of aorta, and then the next is bicuspid aortic valve. Okay. When coming to adolescence, what we have is we have short stature. Yeah, this was also given, I suppose. Short stature. Okay. Low posterior hairline, webbed neck, fine, cubitus valgus, coarctation of aorta, streak ovaries, broad chest, widely placed nipple, okay, and short fourth metacarp. So these are the usual clinical features we have to focus. Again, you have to look at the age. If it is infancy, you have to check for these. If it is adolescence, you have to check for these. Okay. And yeah, these were the questions around 17 to 18. Okay, these were the recall questions. And yeah, it was a very easy paper. Thank you.
Best training, peaceful environment, PG medical entrance exam preparation were my expectations. I got them at Speed Medical Village in Kanchipuram. Today, I am a PG topper.
Speed Medical Village, a unique eco-friendly campus dedicated for PG preparation. Speed Medical Institute, a complete solution for medical education.